front of me here we have our row of cabbages. Cabbages are Brassicas. Brassica is a genus that includes a lot of very familiar vegetables such as mustards, cabbages, kale, broccoli, turnips, bok choy, cauliflower, broccoli, and many others. It should be obvious to you that these are being destroyed by insects. This is the truth about trying to grow brassicas. Actually, the astonishing thing is I've already sprayed these 3 times, but it was earlier in the season, and I haven't sprayed them for probably about 6 weeks, and they are being destroyed by insects. This row is a row of collards. The collards are probably not quite as bad, but they're certainly not doing well. They're being hit pretty hard by the insects, and also this one in particular has what's probably bacterial disease and downy mildew as well. I pulled some cabbage earlier in the week that had gotten infected with downy mildew. You can see this row of collards here. Some of the plants are almost skeletonized. So the question that I have is, how did people grow these things before they had the ability to spray for insects? Were children forced to go out and pick the insects off by hand? Maybe. Were there less insects then? Maybe. I'm not sure what the answer is here, but the disease issues with these, especially in a hotter year, wetter year like this year, make it really difficult. The only years where we have tremendous success with brassicas is very cool, wet years. And this year has been a warmish, wet year after a mild winter, and the disease pressure is really extreme. We'll get something, but I'm not sure that if I never sprayed any of this stuff that we would ever get anything. So this is the untold truth, that when you actually try to grow your own collards or your cabbages or your broccoli, this is what actually happens if you're not spraying them. Anything you buy that looks decent, I can assure you, was sprayed many times and heavily. And yes, even the organic stuff, my friends. I'm sorry to tell you that organic does not actually mean not sprayed. It just means sprayed with a different set of chemicals, some of which are not necessarily any less bad than the conventional chemicals. They're still sprayed. This is what you get when you try to do this stuff, at least in this climate here. The melons directly in front of me are being slaughtered by downy mildew. This has been probably the worst year we've ever had for downy mildew, and I'm not sure how many ripe melons we're actually going to get, or if these melons that are here now will ripen to a point where they taste good, considering that the plants are dying so rapidly. These plants looked fine a week ago, so I would say in another week there won't be anything left, and I'm not positive we will get any decent melons. The same thing has happened to our cucumbers and our other melons, and we will take a look at some of those. The plants in front of me now are cucumbers. This is supposed to be a resistant variety to downy mildew, and it is in the sense that it hasn't died yet and it's still producing some cucumbers. This is Suyo long, a Japanese variety. It's not immune. I think that the resistance it has might give you an additional 2 weeks, possibly. This cucumber is Marketmore 97, and it's also a partially resistant one, but once again I think it's about as resistant as the Suyo long, and perhaps we can gain an additional 2 weeks before these plants die. The resistant ones, I can get enough of a growing season here to get mature seeds, which is really all I want from cucumbers, so it's not so bad, but the production is definitely affected and the quality of the fruit is affected as well. This is another set of melons. These are Oka Melons, and they're not as bad actually as the ones we looked at earlier, which that variety was Ananas. These are quickly dying, but they're not quite dead. We may get a few okay melons from these. And this one, which is pretty badly hit as well by the disease, is Collective Farm Woman from the Ukraine. This one is being knocked out rather fast as well. I'm not sure how things are going to work out for the melons this year. I had a bunch of cucumbers in this area earlier. As you can see, they are basically all dead now. There are a few rotten ones left I didn't get earlier, but here is a Suyo long cucumber. This is actually what a fully mature cucumber looks like. They will turn yellow or orange when they're ripe. We eat cucumbers in their immature, unripe state. When a cucumber is fully ripe and the seeds have matured, they do turn yellow or orange, as would be befitting for a member of the melon and pumpkin family. But yeah, it's become really difficult to grow cucumbers here. The strains of disease have changed over the last 10 to 20 years, and it used to be a lot easier. A lot of my old favorite varieties of cucumbers are just about ungrowable, and now I've been forced to look at varieties that are resistant, which what I've found is the resistance is only partial, or to look at alternative crops to cucumbers. And we are trying some, like this stuff here, this wacky stuff here. It looks a lot like a very famous plant that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but as of yet it has not produced any fruit. It's called Achocha. It's from South America, and the plant is certainly a healthy plant, very vigorous, very strong plant, but we have yet to see any actual fruit. So until we get a fruit out of it, I can't say much for it. It certainly is disease resistant. The plant in front of me with large yellow flowers, although it looks a lot like a pumpkin vine or a summer squash, is actually a Asian native. There's a lot of common names for it: winter melon, wax melon, ash gourd. It ends up being used somewhere between a cucumber and mild summer squash in terms of its use in cooking. I've tried it out this year to see if we can use it as some sort of a replacement for cucumbers. Clearly it is much more disease resistant, although it's not immune. I can see some minor disease and insect issues, but it's far better than your regular cucumbers. It does produce an enormous fruit, which we haven't got any huge ones yet, but there's one here that is about a week old maybe. Sorry for the glare, but they can grow, I think, up to the size of a beach ball, basketball, quite large, and apparently they keep for 6 months or a year with no special care. So we'll see how these crazy things do. It seems like they need a very long growing season and a tremendous amount of heat, but in terms of their disease resistance, they do seem to be very good in that respect.